You've probably looked at houses lately and thought to yourself, there's just no way. If we're talking about a $400,000 house, I'd want around $125,000 in household income before I'd call it comfortably affordable. But this is the part that surprised me. Let's take that exact same $400,000 house, using the average mortgage rate from August of 2021. The principal and interest would have been around $1,500 a month. Today, using the current average rate, it's about $2,300 a month. That's $800 more every month. The rates behind that comparison are 2.87% in August of 2021 and 6.67% today. $400,000 isn't some crazy luxury example either. The median new home sold for about $398,000 in June of 2026. So basically $400,000 is the median price of a new house right now. And yeah, before somebody says that inflation is real and home prices went up too, but I'm holding the house at $400,000 on purpose because I want to show you that we don't need the price to change for buying it to get way harder. So let's say you're buying a home today in the year 2026. How much do you need to make for that $400,000 home? You put 10% down, and once you stack property taxes, homeowner's insurance, and probably mortgage insurance, I'm going to use $3,000 a month as the all-in number. It could be more, it could be less, depending on where you live and how brutal your property taxes are. The standard rule of thumb says housing should sit somewhere around 28% of your gross income. You land somewhere around $125,000 to $130,000 a year, and that's household income, which matters. But according to the U.S. Census Bureau, only 3 out of 10 households in America make $125,000 or more a year. So here's the problem. The median home price in the US today is well above what the majority of households in the US can actually afford. So if you've been looking at normal houses and quietly feeling like you're missing something, you're probably not. The math just genuinely moved. And guys, really quick, if you like videos where we take these giant financial decisions and just make the numbers make sense, go ahead and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so now the part nobody talks about. The brutal down payment. 10% down on a $400,000 house is $40,000 in cash, sitting in an account ready to go. Before closing costs, before movers, before you even buy a lawnmower. And the 40 grand isn't the whole entry fee either. Closing costs typically run anywhere from 2% to 5% of the purchase price. So on a $400,000 house, that's another $8,000 to $20,000. If you're paying those costs out of pocket, you're not really thinking about $40,000. You're thinking somewhere around $48,000 to $60,000 just to get through closing. And that's before moving costs, furniture, home repairs, or keeping any emergency fund is taken into account. According to the Fed's survey from last year, only 38% of adults said they could cover a $5,000 or more emergency expense using nothing but their savings. 38% for 5 grand. So we're talking about potentially needing $50,000 or more to get through closing in a country where most adults struggle to cover a $5,000 emergency using their savings alone. Now, obviously, some people do have that kind of money laying around. They've been saving for years, or they sold another house, or they've got investments they can pull from. And since we only put 10% down, if this is a conventional loan, you're probably paying PMI too. That's private mortgage insurance. You pay for it and it protects the lender, not you. With a conventional loan, putting less than 20% down will typically mean paying PMI. It's basically just another cost you incur for getting into the house without having 20% down. So there's really two questions here and they're separate. Can you get through closing without wiping yourself out? And can you manage that monthly payment after you close? Because if I put that money down, paid closing costs, moved in the house, and then checked my account and only had a few $100s left, I'd be a ball of anxiety. Also, the house doesn't stop costing money the day you buy it, and that's kind of when it actually starts. Now, that $125,000 required income number comes from a rule based on gross income, which has always bugged me a little because I don't get to spend my gross income. Nobody does. That number lives on a piece of paper. Two households can both make $125,000 and be in completely different situations. One's got no debt and cheap car insurance, and the other's got 2 car payments and daycare to pay for. Same number on the tax return, and yet that $3,000 payment is going to feel nothing alike in those two households. A lender is required to determine whether you can reasonably repay the mortgage, but that's not the same thing as deciding whether that payment still leaves enough room for everything else you want to do with your money. The other thing is housing prices are insanely dependent on its location. A $400,000 house in one city is a starter home, and 2 states over in a small county, it's a really nice place on some actual land. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you to move. Your job is where you live, your family is probably there, and that's an enormous decision, and it's not a personal finance tip. But it's important to understand there's a real difference between I can't afford a house and I can't afford this house here. That sounds like the same sentence, and they're really not. And one more thing that makes this a little less bleak. If you buy at a high rate and rates come down later, you might be able to refinance. You might. I'd never buy a house counting on that. Rates can stay high, your financial situation can change, and refinancing isn't free. But the interest rate is something you might eventually be able to change if rates fall and refinancing actually makes sense. So buy it at the payment you can handle right now. If rates drop later, great, that's a bonus. And here's the other thing that the rate change from 2021 to now did, which I don't think many people connect enough. It didn't just make buying more expensive, it also gave a huge number of existing homeowners a really good reason not to sell. Right now, about half of outstanding mortgages are at 4% or lower. About 2/3 are below 5%, and only about 22% are at 6% or higher. Think about what that means. Somebody's sitting in a house with a 3% mortgage. They might want another bedroom, they might want a different neighborhood, or they might just be tired of the place they're in. But selling means giving up that mortgage and walking into today's brutal market. It's the exact same trade we did at the top of the video. Give up your mortgage of around $1,500 and pick up a mortgage of around $2,300 for basically the same amount of house. So a lot of people stay where they are. That's called the mortgage lock-in rate effect. It's one of the reasons existing home inventories got so constrained after rates shot up. All right, the last thing. You see somebody your age post a picture in front of their new house holding up their keys. There's never a full disclosure caption underneath that says, "My in-laws covered the down payment." Nobody posts that part. You just see the house. So somebody else buying doesn't really tell you anything. It might be two incomes, it might be somebody's parents or grandparents helping out, or they might be putting 60% of their take-home pay into it and eating ramen in their really nice kitchen. You don't know, and you can't ever know. And buying a house always gets treated like an achievement checkpoint in life. You get a job, you save some money, and at some point you're supposed to buy a house because that's what everyone else does. Then your coworkers start buying, your friends start buying, and it gets very easy to feel like you skipped a step somewhere or like you're falling behind. I don't really buy that. If getting into a house means I drain everything, stop investing, and spend the next 3 years white knuckling every repair that comes up, I don't think that puts me ahead. I think I just have a house at that point with a lot of worrying. I'd rather buy this thing 2 years late and actually be able to live in it than buy it 2 years early and spend every August praying that the AC holds up. And for what it's worth, I don't own a home yet either. So I'm not standing here having already figured it out. So in summary, who can afford a $400,000 house in 2026? Around $125,000 in household income is where I'd start. But you also need the cash to get it without emptying yourself out, and enough room afterwards that the mortgage isn't controlling everything else in your life. So if you're making decent money and a normal house still feels weirdly out of reach, there's a reason for it. The math has moved. Interest rates have increased 3.8% since 2021. I did the same breakdown on trucks, and honestly, the numbers there are even worse. That video will be linked. Thanks for watching.